Up on Network Africa. Libyan Prime Minister survives apparent assassination attempt. A soldier and 5 park rangers killed in suspected jihadist ambush in Benin Republic. Plus, Uganda says ICJ ruling ordering it to pay $325 million for Democratic Republic of Congo occupation unfair. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Shoboale. We begin in Libya, where Prime Minister Abdul Hamid al-Dibeiba has survived an apparent assassination attempt by unknown assailants. Several rounds struck his car as it was being driven through the capital Tripoli. The gunmen fled the scene. The attack comes amid a dispute over the control of the government, with Dibeiba pledging to fight efforts by his opponents to replace him.
Footage released by Libyan Prime Minister Abdulhamid al-Dibeiba's office showed bullet holes on the roof of his car and in the headlights after he escaped an assassination attempt in the early hours of Thursday. Government officials say assailants struck his car with bullets, but he escaped unharmed. The incident reportedly happened as Dibeiba was returning home. Libya's chief prosecutor has launched an investigation into the attack. The attack comes amid intense factional wrangling over the control of the government, with Dibeiba pledging to fight efforts by his opponent to replace him. Dibeiba, a powerful businessman from the city of Misrata, was installed as head of the United Nations-backed Government of National Unity in March and was tasked with leading the country to elections on December 24. He was given the caretaker role on the condition that he will not contest the election, but he declared himself a candidate in November in a move others called unfair. The election was ultimately cancelled amid dispute between rival factions on laws governing the poll and the parliament, which mostly backed Eastern forces during the country's war, has declared the GNU invalid. The parliament's move to choose a new prime minister may lead to a return to the situation before Dibeiba's unity government was installed, with parallel administration seeking to rule Libya from different cities. Armed forces have mobilized more fighters and equipment in the capital over recent weeks, raising fears the political crisis could trigger fighting. The UN, Western powers and even some members of parliament have called for Dibeiba to stay in his role until the election. A new date for the vote is yet to be confirmed. Libya has had little peace or stability since the 2011 NATO-backed uprising against Muammar Gaddafi and its split in 2014 between warring factions in East and West.
Well, for more on the situation in the North African country, the VOA's Edward Yeronean is covering the story. He joins us from Cairo in Egypt. Edward, despite the apparent assassination attempt, we're hearing that Parliament has gone ahead with the vote, and it seems they've unanimously approved a new interim prime minister. Speak to us about who this is and the implications of this.
Yes, Tenny. The Parliament voted several hours ago to approve the former Interior Minister Fathi Bashaga. Bashaga is reputed to be an Islamist and reputed to be close to other Islamic forces which are present in the capital. So it would seem that he would be a viable candidate or a viable prime minister, assuming that no one opposes him on the ground. There may be some opposition, but it looks like he's going to have some support from other forces in Tripoli.
Well, we have to remember that Debaiba has pledged to fight efforts by his opponents to replace him. Aren't there fears that this could lead to another power struggle?
Well, there have been power struggles in Tripoli, the capital, since the new or former President Gaddafi, leader Gaddafi, fell over 10 years ago now from power, or was pushed out of power and was killed. But that being said, personally, I think the most powerful forces would be supporting Bashaga. Bashaga was the most well-known political figure in Western Libya up until this new unity government was named in March under Debaiba. And Debaiba was less powerful and less popular than Bashaga at that time. So I don't know that he's really going to be able to hold his ground, even if he insists he's not going to hand over power.
All right, let's talk about the apparent assassination attempt. What are you hearing in terms of investigations into this attack? Do officials have any idea who's behind this?
Well, it's a bit of a pie in the sky because the only pictures of this assassination attempt come from the Prime Minister's office itself. And no one else, including Reuters, is saying that they saw any trace of this assassination attempt. So there's some question about the authenticity of it, even though they have pictures of bullet holes in the Prime Minister's car. But as I remember, I studied in France. They always used to joke that former President François Mitterrand, when he was Interior Minister, launched his own assassination attempt against himself in order to raise his popularity back in, I guess, 1956, something like that. So it's not unheard of, but I really couldn't prove that. And the Libyan general prosecutor is reportedly investigating the assassination attempt.
All right, then, Ed, thanks a lot for the update.
My pleasure, Tenny.
And elsewhere in North Africa, dozens of Tunisian judges have staged a demonstration in the capital to protest against the president's plan to dissolve the Supreme Judicial Council. The group of judges held banners and chanted slogans outside the Tunis court building, supported by protesters outside the gates to the building. After the plan met with intense criticism, the Justice Minister said on Wednesday that President Kais Saied will change the Judicial Council but not abolish it. Western donors whose help is needed to avert a crisis in public finances have also criticized the government for the move. And to the situation in Ethiopia's Tigray, wrapping up her visit to the country, UN Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed has underscored the importance of having humanitarian aid reach the people most in need. After visiting the Afar region alongside the President of Ethiopia, she repeated the Secretary General's call for an end of hostilities and for a pathway to peace through the national dialogue. She says there is never a winner in conflict, and the pain of it rests mainly on the shoulders of women and children.
I also met with very many of the workers of the United Nations in partnership with Ethiopians in trying to get humanitarian aid and assistance to the people that need it most. And this perhaps is the biggest call that we have, is that humanitarian assistance needs to get there yesterday. The urgency at which it needs to find, especially women and children that have been affected by this, is extremely important. As you have heard before, the Secretary General continues to reiterate his call for the cessation of hostilities in the country, for us to find that pathway to peace through the national dialogue. This has been a journey of solidarity with the Ethiopian people. It is one that we are convinced you will find a way, and we will accompany the Ethiopian people to that peace. Then we can really begin to talk about the investments that we need to make in development. This is important in the short and in the longer term.
In West Africa, a soldier and 5 park rangers have been killed in an attack by suspected Islamist militants in a national park in northern Benin Republic. At least 10 other people have also been injured. According to reports, the ambush happened during a routine patrol in the W National Park, which straddles the borders of Benin Republic, Burkina Faso and Niger. All 3 nations have seen frequent attacks by militants linked to the Islamic State group. Officials say extra troops from the army have been sent to the national park, which is managed by a South African wildlife charity. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, President Felix Tshisekedi has appointed a new security advisor. It follows the arrest on Saturday of his former advisor, Francois Beya, for his alleged role in a coup plot. The new advisor, Jean-Claude Bokassa, served as Mr. Beya's deputy. According to government spokesperson Kasongo Mwema, Mr. Beya was detained by the National Intelligence Agency after initial investigations uncovered serious evidence linking him to a plot to undermine the government. Uganda says it's unfair and wrong that the International Court of Justice wants it to pay $325 million in repatriations to the Democratic Republic of Congo for invading parts of Ituri province between 1998 and 2003. The UN court found that Uganda had failed in its duty to prevent acts that violated international law, including the killing of civilians, rape, and the recruitment of child soldiers. It ordered Uganda to pay 5 annual installments of $65 million between 2022 and 2026, with the first installment due in September.
Uganda has been ordered to pay $325 million for its role in conflicts in Democratic Republic of Congo's resource-rich Ituri region. But the reparations awarded by judges at the International Court of Justice are far below the $11 billion Congo was asking for. The court dismissed several claims, including broad compensation for macroeconomic damage. It said a clear link between Uganda's actions and alleged economic damage was not shown. Uganda must pay the reparations in 5 yearly installments of $65 million starting in September this year.
The court then sets out the total amount of compensation awarded to the DRC, which is $325 million US. This global sum includes $225 million US for damage to persons, $40 million US for damage to property, and $60 million US for damage related to natural resources. The court is satisfied that the total sum awarded and the terms of the payment remain within the capacity of Uganda to pay. Therefore, the court does not need to consider the question whether, in determining the amount of compensation, account should be taken of the financial burden imposed on the responsible state, given its economic condition.
At previous hearings, Uganda had said its economy would be ruined by the billions of dollars the Democratic Republic of Congo was seeking. The long-running dispute was first brought before the UN's highest court in 1999. In 2005, the International Court of Justice ruled that Uganda had violated international law by occupying parts of Ituri with its own troops and by supporting other armed groups during a war that raged from 1998 to 2003. Congo returned to the court in 2015, saying negotiations between the neighbors to agree reparations had stalled.
The court notes that the reparation awarded to the DRC for damage to person and to property reflects the harm suffered by individuals and communities as a result of Uganda's breach of its international obligations.
The ruling is final and without appeal. Congo's representatives have previously said reparations will be distributed fairly to people who suffered directly as a result of Uganda's actions.
This will come on the program. Back in school at the age of 99, a Kenyan great-grandmother sets example for the next generation. More details in a moment. Please stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. According to the World Health Organization and other aid groups, a global initiative to get COVID-19 tests, treatments and vaccines to poorer nations has only received 5% of the donations sought to deliver on its aims this year. The Act Accelerator initiative calls for fair share-based financing of $23 billion to end pandemic as global emergency in 2022 by providing low and middle income countries with tests, treatment, vaccines and PPEs.
The Access to COVID-19 Tools ACT Accelerator budgeted $23.4 billion for its efforts from October 2021 till September 2022, of which $16.8 billion is expected to come in form of grants from richer countries in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic.
Depending on where you live, it might feel like the COVID-19 pandemic is almost over, or it might feel like it is at its worst. But wherever you live, COVID isn't finished with us. There's no borders. And as we all know from Omicron, any feeling of safety can change in a moment. We know this virus will continue to evolve, but we're not defenseless. We have the tools to prevent this disease, to test for it, and to treat it. Where people have access to those tools, this virus can be brought under control. Where they don't, this virus continues to spread, to evolve, and to kill. The biggest barrier we face to ending the pandemics as a global health emergency is ensuring all people in every country have access to those tools. The ACT Accelerator is vital for this mission.
During the event, a number of world leaders publicly supported the push for more funding, calling for the investment to end the emergency phase of the COVID-19 pandemic this year.
The funding gap of $16.2 billion pales in comparison to what the developed economies have spent on their domestic responses. As co-chairs, South Africa and Norway have written to more than 50 heads of state and government asking them to contribute their fair share of financing to ACT Accelerator agencies. This funding is vital if we achieve the global targets for access to vaccines, tests, treatments, and PPE, and of ending the pandemic in 2022.
The lack of funding has been apparent from the start of the pandemic. The gap for the project's previous budget was $14.5 billion. Partners said the majority of the funding so far has gone into COVID-19 vaccines, leaving the other goals, such as tests, treatments, and PPEs, short. According to statistics from the World Health Organization, the initiative has fallen well short of its goal to deliver 2 billion COVID vaccines in 2021, with only 10% of people in low-income countries having received at least one dose of a vaccine, compared to almost 68% in richer countries.
All political leaders must now do what they can to close this financing gap. We know that unless COVID-19 tools become available to all, it is no mystery, infection rates will stay high, and patients, health systems, and economies will suffer. And new viral strains may evolve, posing a threat to all of us once again. So investing in ACT-A is the mutual interest of all countries.
With a significant proportion of the global population still unable to get vaccinated, tested, or treated, a diverse group of governments have agreed on a new financing framework developed in support of the ACT Accelerator, which makes fair share requests from richer countries to contribute to the global fight against COVID-19.
And so speaking of vaccines, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen says the EU will increase spending to boost vaccinations in African states. Speaking during a visit to Senegal's capital, Dakar, Ms. von der Leyen says the EU would spend €125 million to help countries train medical staff and administer doses, in addition to €300 million already committed for the purpose by the EU and its states.
You know that the European Union has shared so far, Team Europe, 145 million doses of vaccines. This is not enough. We know that. So our goal till the summer is to have 450 million doses of vaccines that we share. But it's also important to get the vaccines in the arms, so to have the vaccination. And for that, we have already allocated 300 million euros, but we will give an additional 125 million euros. It is so important to get the vaccinations up and rising, and therefore I'm very much looking forward to the cooperation we have here together.
And back here in Nigeria, the chairman and CEO of the Nigerians in Diaspora Commission, Honorable Abike Dabiri-Erewa, says building a new Nigeria can be actualized through a mutual and collaborative effort between Nigerians at home and those abroad. The NIDCOM boss stated this when she received a UK-based Nigeria radiologist, Professor Ruben Oluobaru, in her office in Abuja. The reason for the visit is the planned donation and inauguration of medical equipment to some healthcare facilities in Ekiti State.
God did not make us the most populous black nation in the world with all that we're endowed with for nothing. We should be what Israel is like to the Jews. That's what it should be to the blacks, that they should be a reference point for blacks. And the kind of policies and attitudes that happen for those of us in the diaspora, it really, and I'm sure for people within the country who can see things the way it ought to be, we are punching so well below our potentials, and nobody, I keep saying to people, nobody is going to help us build Nigeria but Nigerians. And it takes commitment from Nigerians both at home and abroad, but we must work together as a team. Nigerians at home must not see diaspora people as enemies. So there's a lot to tap into, and I just pray you get the support you need, the vision from people who have the vision to change the trajectory of this country by making use of the resources that are available to the country, within the country, and outside the country in particular.
Now, the International Civil Aviation Organization has given its seal of approval for the Ghana card to be recognized globally as a valid e-passport. At a ceremony held at the headquarters of the International Civil Aviation Organization in Canada, Ghana was officially presented with the certificate to make the Ghana card an e-passport to be accepted at 44,000 airports across the world. Ghana's High Commissioner to Canada received the token, which denoted Ghana's recognition by the International Civil Aviation Organization, while speaking at the occasion. And finally on the program, 99-year-old Priscilla Sisteni is the oldest primary school student in grade 6 at a school in Kenya's Rift Valley. Sisteni wants to achieve the goal of a lifetime to pass her exams, obtain her diploma, and become a doctor. Take a look.
In a stone classroom in rural Kenya's Rift Valley, 99-year-old Priscilla Sisteni takes notes alongside her fellow pupils who are all more than 8 decades younger than her. Wearing her school uniform, Sisteni, who is in her 6th year of primary schooling, says she went back to class to set a good example for her great-grandchildren and to pursue a new career.
When I mentioned to my children that I was going back to school, none of them opposed the idea. Their only worry was how I was going to be able to read the text on my books. Then I told them that I was going to be diligent and learn how to write, step by step, under the teacher's guidance.
The government of the East African nation began subsidizing the cost of primary schooling in 2003, allowing some older members of society who had missed out on education in their younger days to revive their dreams. This catapulted some of the elderly pupils into stardom, including Seteni, who traveled to Paris last year for the launch of a film about her journey titled Gogo Priscilla. Gogo means grandma in her native Kalenjin language. But Seteni says her aims were far more practical than becoming a movie star.
I would like to become a doctor because I used to be a midwife.
Her teachers tap her wide experience to keep the peace during lessons.
I make her to be my class monitor, looking for the noisemakers in class. So she managed to do that work. When I go outside, the class will remain silent. When I am not there, Gogo is doing that and telling them, let us read, let us read. So I find it was something which is actually motivative to me and the pupils.
Apart from learning, the 99-year-old says she also enjoys other school activities, including physical education classes, because although she can't jump as much as the children, it keeps her fit. She hopes her story will be an example to others that no matter their age, they can achieve anything they want to.
Amazing stuff. It just proves it's never too late to learn. And that's the program today. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Teniola Shiboale. Bye for now.